Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel Kavi Talks. Today we are going to see a simplified essay of How I Taught My Grandmother to Read. Sudha Murthy is an Indian educator, author and philanthropist who is chairperson of the Infosys Foundation. She is married to the co-founder of Infosys, N.R. Narayana Murthy. Murthy was awarded the Padma Shri, the fourth highest civilian award in India, for social work by the Government of India in 2006. Later in 2023, she was awarded the Padma Bhushan, the third highest civilian award in India. Sudha Murthy was born into a Kannada-speaking family on 19 August 1950 in Shigaon, Haveri in Karnataka. She was raised by her parents and maternal grandparents. These childhood experiences form the historical basis for her first notable work entitled How I Taught My Grandmother to Read, Wise and Otherwise and Other Stories. Murthy completed a B.Eng in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from the BVB College of Engineering and Technology. Let's move on to the introduction to the essay. How I Taught My Grandmother to Read is a short story written by Sudha Murthy, which is included in her book, Wise and Otherwise. The story revolves around the narrator's experience of teaching her illiterate grandmother to read. In this story, she describes the determined efforts of her illiterate grandmother, a 62-year-old woman, to make herself literate. She decides to read a novel on her own and sets the deadline to achieve the target. Women adheres to the conservative values. In the story, the narrator recounts her visits to her grandparents' house during her summer vacations. She describes her grandmother as a traditional woman who adheres to conservative values. The grandmother takes care of the household chores and is deeply devoted to her family. However, she is illiterate and has always felt a sense of embarrassment and inferiority because of her inability to read. Routine life of the grandmother. Her daily routine was to wait till afternoon to receive the morning newspaper since the transport system was poor. The weekly magazine would arrive a day late. The narrator and her family members would wait impatiently for the bus to arrive with the newspapers, weekly magazine, and mail. Triveni was then a very popular writer in the Kannada language. The villagers would excitedly await the weekly magazine Karmavira, in which one of her novels, Kashi Yatre, was appearing as a serial. It was the tale of an elderly woman who had a sincere desire to visit Kashi or Varanasi to worship Lord Vishweshwara and receive the ultimate punya. But in the end, the elderly woman gives up her wealth to finance the marriage of a young, orphan girl who falls in love but cannot afford a wedding. Grandmother's guru and her dedication towards learning. The narrator adopts a patient and innovative approach to teaching her grandmother. Instead of using traditional methods, she starts by writing the names of the spices on the lids of the containers in the kitchen. This way, her grandmother learns to associate the written word with the actual object. Slowly, the narrator introduces her grandmother to reading small, simple words and sentences. She identifies with the lead character of the story. The problem of being illiterate. When the narrator returned after a week attending a wedding with her cousins in the neighboring village, her grandmother was in tears. The narrator is surprised to see her cry, as she had never seen her cry even in the most difficult situations. Her grandmother opens up her past to the narrator when she inquires about the problem. She shares her sorrow of losing her mother when she was young. Her father, who was a busy man, married again, and she was left with nobody to look after and guide her. As education for women was not regarded as essential, she never stepped into her school life. She was married very young and was busy bringing up her children and grandchildren. The grandmother reveals that she at times have regretted for not going to school, and so she wished that her children and grandchildren should study well. She tells the narrator that when she was away for a week, Karmavira arrived as usual, but she felt humiliated, powerless, and dependent because she was unable to read even a single alphabet. This drives her to learn to read the Kannada alphabet. From the following day, she asks the narrator to enable her read a novel on her own and sets Saraswati Puja Day during Dasara as the deadline. Determination to learn. The narrator laughs at her grandmother's wish to learn at the age of 62. But later understands her eagerness and begins her tuition the following day. She finds out that her grandmother is a bright and hard-working student. She works hard and puts in lots of efforts to attain the goal before the deadline. She would read repeat, write and recite, when she was alone and gradually picked up the necessary skills. When the Dasara festival arrived, the narrator secretly purchases Kashi Yatre, which had been published as a novel by that time. The grandmother takes the narrator to the puja place, makes her sit down on a stool, gifts her a frock material, bends down and touches her feet. The final part of the story. The narrator is taken aback as elders are not supposed to touch the feet of youngsters. But the grandmother tells her that she touches the feet of a teacher and not her grandmother. She feels happy for being independent and also that she could read any novel confidently. The narrator returns her respect by touching her grandmother's feet and gives her gift to her first student. The grandmother receives the gift and reads the title immediately, Kashi Yatre by Triveni and the publisher's name. Let's move on to the conclusion of the essay. Ultimately, How I Taught My Grandmother to Read is a heartwarming story that portrays the impact of education on personal growth and empowerment. It conveys the message that anyone, regardless of age or background, can overcome obstacles and learn new skills with the right support and guidance. The narrator teaches her so well that her grandmother attains the target as desired. She succeeds in making her grandmother an independent woman and fulfills her wish in her old age.